It's been a few years since Paul and I jammed.
That's
depressing, isn't it, man?
It has. And I was just saying, I think you're the last, or you or Pete were probably the last guitar player I jammed with. That's what
happens when you work for Line 6, isn't it? It's just like, it's all about doing demos on your own.
Sitting in the house alone, yeah. So yes, no, it's great. It's great to be here.
Well, it's lovely to see you again, Paul. Paul, if you haven't seen him before on our channel, Paul Hindmarsh has been playing guitar in the music industry for as long as I can remember. We've known each other for a long, long time. Started our journeys in musical instrument retailers about the same time.
Such a long time. 1994.
Oh man, and we were both saying actually we're not a dissimilar age. I'm a little bit older than Paul, and we were basically just talking about how much our bodies are falling apart over the last year or so.
That's a conversation that happens everywhere I go these days.
Anyway, but today we are talking about the upgraded versions of the Line 6 Catalyst combos.
Yep.
And you've bought the full range, right? So the little 60, the sort of medium-sized 100, and the Big Daddy 200 here.
Yep.
And Catalyst, I think, if we talk about Mark 1 just for a second, it was a real attempt from, in my opinion anyway, from Line 6 to sort of leave behind perhaps that slightly more sort of digital legacy where the, you know, guitar amplifiers had high frequency tweeters in them and all that kind of stuff, and try and get back to a bit more familiar guitar sound for the guitar player. So they're simple to use, quite familiar sort of speaker technology and amp technology, but tell us what's been updated on the Mark II.
I mean, first of all, just to completely say, that's absolutely what Catalyst was and is meant to be. It's a simple dual channel amplifier that you can just go up to, and you've got channel A, channel B, and all the controls that you would be familiar with. And then you've got two different effects on there as well. But mostly it was about the different amp designs from our sound engineers, and some of them have been derived from Helix as well. So originally we had 6 different amp designs in there, and that's all been updated now as well. So you've got double the amount now. So there's 12 different amp designs in there. And what happened with the original Catalyst was those amp designs in Catalyst proved so popular that they then got migrated over to Helix as well. So a lot of those amplifiers that we'll discuss today, things like the Carillon and the Aristocrat and things, they are actually available in Helix Floor and the whole Helix range. And then there's a couple of other things. I mean, it's cosmetically different. We're telling why, if you're going to do, why not change the cosmetics on it. A couple of the sort of hidden features are a bit more accessible now on the top panel in terms of the silk screening. It's a little bit clearer to see where the noise gate is, and if you want to move your effects around, you can do that so quite clearly now from the top panel. And then there's a slight update to the effect as well. Like on the original one, you were always kind of like the effect 2 was always going to be reverb. Now you can actually have whichever effect that you want. So you could have delay on effect 1, and you could have filter on effect 2, and sort of mix and match those as well. So so an update really across the board.
It's super popular sort of price points, very competitively priced. The 60 watt one at the end there is not a dissimilar price to something like a Boss Katana kind of territory. So that's kind of what these sort of things are up against, and obviously down to you to choose what you think you like the best. Can we go through the dozen preamp sounds, or amp sounds? Because I'm kind of, I find it quite interesting that whilst the market is desperately trying to sort of go, here's our version of a Fender 65 Deluxe, and here's our version of a Marshall JTM, and here, et cetera, and which of course then people will have an opinion of, like, well, it doesn't sound how I think, da-da-da-da. So Line 6 have sort of stepped away from that, haven't they, with Catalyst?
In some ways, yeah, because we have a team of really talented sound designers there. So we've got guys like Sam, and we've got Ben Adrian there. And in the digital world, because of the way they were creating models for Helix, they were component modeling. So they would model how a tube works, and how this part of the circuit board works, and how this part, and how it all interacts. And then it became apparent really that you could just have digital, just basically build them from scratch. You didn't need to be taking original circuit boards. Those guys are talented enough to know, well, actually, like, you could do this and you could do that, and almost come up with this idea of, like, it could be an amp that has never existed in real life. It could be an amp that's impossible, which is something that's potentially, in Helix, that idea of an amplifier that might explode in real life because it would be driving so hot. You can actually create it in the digital world and get it, you know, and build that there. So yeah, so these amplifiers, certainly with the first 6 amplifiers that we put in, yeah, we're kind of playing to the talents of our talented sound designers.
Go through those first 6. It's been a while since we even heard that, and then we'll just move on to the second 6. So yeah, we're really just now, you know, inevitably there will be models that have a nicer clean sound or a nicer overdrive sound. So I suppose people will go, "Oh, that to me sounds like a Fender or whatever it is," but that's not the intention. So let's just have a little listen.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is group 1. And what I've done here is I've just, to make things even like really easy, you can just have this in manual mode. So manual mode is where exactly what you see is what you get on the top on the top panel there. So this would be the Clarity Clean sound. So I'm just going to turn the reverb down a little bit from that, sorry, the delay down a little bit from that jam. So it's just always meant to be super clean. Yeah.
It's, again, I was so happy, and generally speaking, I think most amp brands now have moved away from putting FR speakers in guitar amplifiers, because for me, the joy of having a guitar amplifier as opposed to playing through a home studio setup or something like that, or a PA or whatever, is that slightly more immediate in the room sound that a combo brings. That, you know, if I'm being sort of personally critical of some ways of listening to digital, when you've got an FR cab or you're listening back through a wedge, it often sounds like you're listening to somebody play a guitar in a different room, and then you're sort of hearing it through your hi-fi speakers rather than being in the room with the amp.
It does, yeah. I mean, there is a flip side of that, is what all of those people are doing with those FR speakers, is just making sure that the audience get the best thing in a big gig situation where they can't necessarily hear the amp on stage. They just want to hear a really good mic'd up sound through a PA, or obviously in a recording as well. So there's swings and roundabouts, really.
I think it's my personal preference, coming from a background where I've just been used to hearing certain things. I guess if you're a much younger player and you've only ever heard your guitar amplifiers through a set of FR speakers or studio, you're going to have a completely different opinion to me, and that's totally fine, you know. But yeah, I like that this is it feels more just like, oh yeah, it's a guitar amp in a room. Thank you, you know.
No, I get. I mean, like we said before, we come from the same place, so I totally get that. But there's the two sides to that, isn't there? So I mean, that's Clarity. That was the original clean sound. And it's just meant at any volume it's going to be loud. And incidentally, these amps are really loud. I mean, the 200 watt is deafening, you know. Right. And I was just saying, as one of my ailments, my deteriorating hearing. The 200 watt.
We blame that. Oh well.
So that was the Clarity. What is interesting about some of these amps is the boost that's on there as well. Yeah. So maybe chat about that while we go through that. Okay. So what the sound design team did was, instead of, they actually hand-picked a boost that was suitable for each one of those amplifiers. So in Clarity, it actually adds a gain stage. So it's not simply just a boost controller that's boosting the volume. It actually changes how the amp sort of feels as well. So, and as I'm in manual mode with some of these changes, I might have to sort of tweak things slightly. So if I stick that on there. So it just gives it
sounds all right. Yeah, it sounds decent.
It sounds great.
So yeah, sorry, that was a bit unfair. So it sounds all right. I think that was one of my questions. I just clarified with Paul before we started filming. You know, I think different people will have a different opinion on Line 6 decision to assign a single type of boost to each amp. So some people, and I think I was a bit like, oh, so I can't have the boost then from the third amp model on the first amp model. But then on the other side, I think there is a move from a lot of brands to go, look, we've got to try and simplify some of this stuff. Otherwise, people are choosing the wrong boost for a certain amp sound and then getting a sound that doesn't sound great, and then they think the amp doesn't sound great. But so I think actually I've seen that on a few products now where people are going, do you know what? I'm not going to let the end user put a combination of things together that the designer doesn't think sounds good.
Maybe there may be a bit of that. I think the other thing is there is when it's adding extra gain stages, some of them are actually tweaking the EQ and slightly changing the way the model works. So it might be it's not just like sticking a boost at the start of it. Some of it's kind of reconfiguring the actual sort of digital circuitry of that. So that was clean, and that was its clean sort of extra gain stage boost. This was the Aristocrat. So
you're going to do your best Guthrie Govan impression now.
I know I'm going to play the same cheesy blues licks that I've played for the last 15 years.
It's doing that. It's quite. We're super low volume in here, and it's doing that quite nice. It sounds like a pushed power amp section, so fairly low gain in the preamp section, but sounding like you're getting that sort of squidgy compression, in the power amp section, which obviously, at a very low volume.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that is the boutique. That's the sort of the boutique section on there. So it is like it would be an amp that was a bit more voice like that. Yeah.
Cool.
And we want to talk about the boost on that.
So
the boost on that is as one of the kinky boost from Helix.
Sounds good.
Yeah, good. And then we've got chime, which is more your sort of, and obviously on each one of these, I'm not tweaking the amp controls here.
Sure.
So these aren't changed. These are staying the same way they are because
you're pretty much everything at 12 o'clock, aren't you?
Yeah.
Gain slightly pushed past it. Yeah.
A little bit extra bass there.
You got the boost on.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Too early with the boost there.
Sounds good.
And if I remember correctly, the boost on this is a sort of treble boost. Yeah.
Cool.
And to that.
Where did your grey Pacifica go? Where was your number one custom shop jobby?
I still use that.
So is that just a standard one, or is that another Japanese one they've made for you?
No, this is off the shelf one. I believe
this is it. Oh, okay.
Yes, you've done a video on these.
No, because I know if you've not, Paul often brings down this sort of graphite coloured Pacifica that Yamaha Japan made for you, which is a slightly tweaked Pacifica. So that I was just interested. So that's just is that one of the
That's one of the professionals. It's
the new professional
white professional.
ones.
Yeah, great.
Nice.
Yeah, great.
Nice. And you're right. We have done a video on that. You can find the link below, provided the person who's supposed to edit this video remembers.
But I've got the custom shop one, which is made in Yazla, which is in the States. Yeah, so it's kind of made to my spec. So if you check out any of the Line 6 videos or my videos, you'll see that in there. And that's a lovely guitar. So where were we? So crunch was voltage. I'll just take the boost off that. This is meant to be a sort of British sort of.
It's great dynamics though, isn't it? You can I love. That is absolutely just from you picking lightly, going clean to just that lovely kind of break-up tone.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of British sort of British kind of crunchy sound. testing my knowledge here. The boost on this is is another gain stage that's being added to that.
Yeah, we're going to have a look at the what happens when you connect a computer up to this and what you can edit from there at the end of this sort of section. I gather it's sort of intentionally you've kept, you've tried to keep as much of the functionality on the top panel as possible. But within that boost control, I'm just interested, is it a sort of a predefined boost and it's just a level thing on the amplifier, or if in the amp can you adjust more of the...
Not on the boost you can't,
right,
but but within the app you can change a whole lot of other things. So that's where you're going to get the deep sort of editing things for the delays, the reverbs, the effects. That's where all of their parameters are. And I think really, I mean, the way I use this amp at home is, and I know a lot of the guys at Line 6 do the same thing. They'll just have it set up as a 2-channel amp, or they'll do exactly what we've done here, which is just on manual mode, and they have a delay and a reverb, and they just plug in and play and enjoy it.
Just whilst we're at that point, so you've got this foot switch on the front there.
Yes.
Can one of the foot switches be assigned to trigger the boost?
Yes.
Fine.
Yes.
And if you're using a stored sound, can you store the amount of boost level that each channel has, or is it always going to be?
Yeah. No, that will store.
Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
that's stored as part of the preset,
so actually, it's a kind of like a 4-channel amplifier then. So you've got your 2 channels plus the ability to boost each of those channels independently as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You could do that. You can assign the foot switch within the app to do a lot of different things. So that could be a channel switch. That could switch in effect 1 and 2. It could switch in just effect 1. It could switch in just effect 2. It could switch on an effect and the boost at the same time. It can go up and down through presets as well. So that's more than just a use, and you assign all of that in the app.
Is this one of these ranges where the foot switch only comes with the dearer one and not the cheaper one?
The foot switch doesn't come with any. So
even simpler. Okay, so that's
we really went for simplicity with that.
Yes,
one.
absolutely. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So so that was Crunch. And again, I'm not having the time really here to tweak any of these sounds. So you're hearing it really with just what's straight away on the amp there. Then we have a dynamic, which would be Kinetic. And these are really the dynamic sections, so they are dynamic. Yeah.
Sounds good. You got the boost still on there.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So
it's fine. We'll let you off.
So
I mean, to be fair, I suppose this first 6 sections are we going to? Would there be any audible difference between a Mark 1 and a Mark 2 at this stage?
They would be exactly the same. And now might be a good chance to say as well that if you do have one of the original Catalyst, this update is a free firmware update as well.
Great.
So everything you were discussing here, you could turn your Catalyst into a Catalyst CX. You just wouldn't have the different front panel and a slight sort of silk screen thing on the top panel there. And then right at the top here, we have the real high gain stuff. So this is Oblivion. Yeah,
nice.
That's what you'd expect from a,
and that not boost. So even on those super high gain ones, do the boosts still give you more gain, or is it a different kind of boost?
It would be a different kind of thing. You would get a boost from it, but it's on this particular one. It's a Stupa Drive, which is kind of a boss. It's kind of a boss pedal, so you might find it tightens something up as a. Yeah, so I mean, it's like more gain than you're ever gonna need there. So so that's the first. That's the first 6.
So now we're into the new territory of what we've not heard before.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
Absolutely. So if I press those 2 buttons together, that's going to blink twice. And then we are going to be into the Archetype Clean. Just a bit fatter sound than the Clarity Clean.
And I assume you're following the same sort of sense that as each model steps up, it just gets gainier and gainier and gainier again all the way around? Or is the second
not
six
really.
It's
not as it's kind of like that, but even on the first set, it depends on how you sort of dial those in. Because so really what you're doing is you're going through different types of amp, like the chime and like the crunch. Even at the end, in the last section, the dynamic amps are not necessarily have to be really. They're more dynamic than gainy, I would say. It's really just when you hit high gain, that's when it starts to go. Dare I use the word insane?
No, that's been written out of the Line 6 language, hasn't it?
So the Archetype Clean. Now this adds a Minotaur boost. So
that's clonny, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it Minotaur?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just playing the same lick all the time. It's not because I only know one lick. I'm sort of deliberately doing it so you can tell probably. I'll switch that off and maybe just to go.
That's a good clean. I like that clean.
Back on, yeah. That's the Archetype. So yeah, so it's making a big difference there in terms of the whole sound of things. Yeah, Boutique is one of the only amp sets that like a direct. So all what we're saying for all these amps is they're either original amp designs because they've been designed by our sound design guys, which all of those first 6 were, and that Archetype one there is a bit of is based on an actual amplifier as well. This one here is an amplifier by John Grammatico. He does a sort of Howard Dumble type amplifier. It's very expensive, very handmade. He's a real audiophile guy, and so that model's available on Helix, and it's a great sounding model. And then we've got an amp that's sort of derived from that we've put into put into this. So again, I'm not going to tweak anything with the delays or the reverbs. Actually, no, maybe I am. Maybe I am on this one. Nice warm sound.
Yeah.
And then the boost on that is the boost that's actually on the Grammatico as well.
It's almost got that synthy fuzz kind of sound that some pedals get.
It's a really fat sound that. Chime on this is quite an interesting sort of boost in that. So this is an amp that was designed by Sam and the sound design teams.
Unbelievable skills at remembering all this stuff. I mean,
I was up all night.
He hasn't referred to notes the entire way through. I am impressed.
I was up all night trying to remember all this stuff. So this is the Elmsley,
right? Okay,
which we just talked about before.
Which again, I completely misread that as Elmsley, which is the surname of Adrian Elmsley, who famously designs all the orange stuff. And I was like, is this your orange? And it's like, no, apparently it's someone else with a similar but not identical surname who's designed an amplifier that's not designed to sound anything like an orange. It's just a total coincidence.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'll try and keep the story really short, but Sam, the sound design guy, turns out he's really into magic. He's really into a lot of things and gets deep into them. Alexander Elmsley, I believe it was Alexander, is a magician who was really good at card tricks and like sleight of hand type of things. And when Sam did this amp, he actually hid some circuitry and it was quite complex. I did a video of this on the Line 6 channel. You might want to watch that for the long story. So it's quite a unique sort of amp design, and because it was a magician and he had hidden some of the things that you wouldn't normally expect in an amp design, he went for Elmsley. So yes, it's nothing to do with orange, which I had no idea about, like no idea at all. So yeah, Elmsley is one of the chime models. But one of the interesting things on the boost on this, I would say, was that this controls a negative feedback level, the negative feedback loop. So this would be definitely one that was not, you would not be able to change and put it in front of a different amplifier, because it just changes the whole circuit. So when I change this, there's a lot of different controls on it. So that's the boost on full there. And then down at the lower end. Yeah, so a completely different sort of sound there. Crunch is a 2204. Let's see if I can get to the end of these without having to consult any notes whatsoever. So this is a 2204 mod.
So is this, I mean, 2203, if you're not familiar, is the sort of the model number of the JCM 800 by Marshall. So is this one where there's been more of an effort to make an amp that sounds a little bit like a 2203, like a hot-rodded one?
Yes, but it's a particular amp that they've got in the States, in Calabasas, that's been modified. So, so it's based on that modification. I think it was for, I would be stepping out of my knowledge a little bit, but I forget, it was modified for a particular player, and I think we've got
I must admit, it's been a long time since I was in Calabasas at Line 6, but I do remember there being a room with an unbelievable number of real guitar amplifiers in there that obviously all the engineers would use to sort of go, right, how close are we getting? What do we need to tweak? You know, all that kind of stuff. So,
it's amazing. It's just full of all the old classics. And then, you know, whenever a Line 6 sort of model an amplifier as well, they'll buy that amplifier. So that sort of sits in there. So that room's probably bigger than it was last time. And it's full of effects and everything as well. It's like the ultimate sort of guitar store. And I mean, you know, everybody at Line 6 loves gear as well. You know, it's like, it's not just there because everybody like is obsessed with digital or anything. Like, everybody just loves old gear and vintage gear and recreating.
We're all guitar players at the end of the day, aren't we?
Absolutely.
We share the same DNA.
Absolutely, yeah. So yes, that's a 2204 mod. And that mod on there is the mod that was done on that amp.
Yes, big. The world needs another rock band that's going to just, you know, hit the scene and do all that again for the new generation. But yes. Good sounds. Good sounds.
I agree, yeah. And then moving on, we've got Dynamic, which is a Ventoux. So this is another one of Ben Adrian's models. So yeah. So I'll switch that boost off. And then this adds a KWB overdrive, which is another one of Ben Adrian's own pedals that he did for that. Responds really well, especially when you consider the price point on this, I think, as well. And then instead of Oblivion, we have
Insane. Oh no,
Badonk.
That's
yeah,
great,
so like
man. Very
just
heavy.
a really high gain, extended bottom end.
And what does the boost do on that? Just to sign it off?
The boost on that is a Horizon drive.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay, so you got like I think that's like a sort of tube screamer with a gate in it type vibe, isn't it? Oh, sorry. This is assuming, of course, it's a copy of the
This particular
Misha
one.
Mansour sort of, thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, that's a big
Chunky.
sound, yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yes, that's all 12 amps. And as you can see, it's really easy to go through.
Yeah.
And I didn't change any of the controls on the top panel there. I just basically switched the boost in and out, and I turned between those 12 different amps.
One of the things I do quite like about this range is that you get all of those knobs and all of that functionality regardless of which three you buy. So
Yes.
it's not like on some brands, like, they'll like, as the amps get bigger, there'll be extra knobs will appear that allow you to do more stuff. These are basically identical whatever you do. Let's just briefly talk about the effects section, and then I want to grab the laptop, have a look about what we can do, and maybe show these guys a little bit about what the DI output sounds.
Yeah.
Because the DI output's obviously got the full speaker emulation on it as well, so you can run that into your front of house or into a computer interface or whatever, and get some killer sounds like that as well.
Yep.
But yeah, so we've got this very simplistic, just effect 1 and effect 2 at the end, with just a single rotary control. So what can we do from the amp before we go into the deep editing?
Almost everything.
Okay.
Almost everything. So it's got 24 different effects built in, and they're arranged into 4 categories, and there's 6 in each category. So you've got a delay category, you've got a modulation category, you've got a filter synth pitch category, and then you've got a reverb category as well, and there's 6 of them in each one of those. It uses the Line 6 color scheme, so anybody who's familiar with Line 6 products is going to know that reverb is going to be orange, modulation is going to be blue, and green is going to be delay, and filter is going to be purple. So we can see on these amps here that we've got a little bit of delay and a little bit of reverb. Those effects can be moved around pre and post amp as well. So you can have your modulation effects. You can have the chorus either in the front of the amp, or you can actually have it in the loop as well, depending after the preamp, I should say. And the idea again is just to be really, really simple and straightforward. It's just an amp that you can just plug into in the house or plug into at a gig, and just dial in the sound that you want. Have a little bit of delay and reverb. If you want to delve deeper, then you can start adding modulations and different things like that. So it's, I mean, that's going to change really mostly the mix of the different effects on there. But you could go through and change any of those effects there as well. So if I wanted to change...
Have you got a favourite combination that you've done in a demo before? Like, something funky filtered, or, I don't know, anything that you've done in a Line 6 demo that you've gone, oh yeah, that was a cool combination?
Yes, I can probably think of a few different things there. If I wanted to go for the more extreme effects, I'm probably going to want to switch in like one of the filters. So I'm just going to I've knocked the reverb off there. So if I wanted to change that now, so if I press this will now select the 6 different delays that are in there.
I was wondering how you did that.
Yeah,
so you're back over to the control you'd normally use for selecting the different amp models.
So it's a selector as opposed to just the amp models. It's a selector that's going to
Understood.
choose a whole collection of different things. So basically press and hold this. This dims, and now you can see I'm in modulation, so I'm going to end up with all kinds of different modulation effects. So I've got tremolos.
The tap button, if you're doing modulation, is just going to affect the speed of the modulation, and then the rotary control is the depth of it, is it, I guess?
Yes. If you wanted to be, you could change that with the app though, if you wanted to go to millisecond and millisecond.
Yeah.
So there you've got phasing. Univibe. And for example, that's not just turning up the mix for the Univibe, that's changing the tempo of it. I've got a rotary speaker sim there. And then there's a chorus. Way. Yeah, and then if you want to save that, you just press one of the amp buttons down, hold that for 2 seconds, and it's gonna save it. So
cool.
And then if we want to do, I think we said we want to do something even more extreme, so press that again. That's gonna take us into filters.
Yes.
So
Pitch
then it's
shift
actually
and
changing the pitch shift
cool.
here. There's the Octavia. So there's an Octavia in there as well. Synth sound. That's probably good.
Why not?
Yeah, so it has all of those built into it as well, and you can save them. And although it looks like it is kind of like a traditional amp, and there's channel A and B, you do actually have 6 banks of that as well. So you could save 12 different presets into that, and then switch between them at a gig. Either using the Footswitch to go up and down through the presets. They could be switched over via MIDI.
It's MIDI as well, is it?
Yeah.
Was the original Catalyst MIDI as well?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, had all of that on it. Yeah, so yeah, you can do that. And in fact, you can control everything via MIDI. Like I did a gig sort of setup where I had it connected to an HX effect, and I had HX effects switching between amp sounds.
I see.
And I had HX effects in, because it has an effects loop, I was able to have HX effects in 4-cable method, also sending out a signal to say, right, be a Carillon or be a 2204 mod.
Sorry, Matt. So it's quite an interesting concept there, because you've leapt from really approaching this from, it's very simplistic. It's it's a 2-channel amplifier. Anybody can use this. You don't need to plug your computer in. Just get your sounds go. To going, or
yes,
full MIDI.
Yeah.
12 different recallable parameters there.
Yeah.
4-cable method. All kind of just going. That's it. That's quite an interesting one, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, and in my role, really, I have to be, and coming from, like you said, we said at the start of the video, in terms of sales, it can be 2 very different customers, and I have to be careful not to, because some people just want to plug in, like me, for example. I just, apart from what I just said about 4-cable method and MIDI and the gig that I did, but when I'm using this amp, I just plug in and I'm on manual mode. I dial in the amp model that I want. I've got a little bit of reverb, a little bit of delay, and I just enjoy playing it. And that's fine to just go into a store and buy this amp and do that. But if you want to go deeper, then you really can, and then you can look at the amp and you can look at MIDI, you can look at all those things.
Just one other quick question before we grab the laptop. I know obviously this one is a 212, but is everything basically mono? I noticed we've just got single DI outputs and right.
Yes.
So regardless of the fact this is a 212 or whatever, it's a mono 212 and the DI out is just mono as well. So that's fine. Okay, cool.
It is, yeah. One last thing I should probably say is that, I mean, that's not an expensive amp. I think
$499.
$499. Yeah, I mean that's a 200-watt amplifier with an effects loop, but a power amp in section as well. So, and I did this a couple of weekends ago. I had a gig and I used a Helix, and I ran a Helix into the power section of that. So it was a 2x12. 2x12 200-watt amplifier. It's great for, and that doesn't have to, you don't have to plug a Helix into it. You could plug any other modeler that you had into it.
Have they all got that power amp input, or is it just so they all do? I mean, that's something that again I think I've often wondered, particularly given that some FR cabinets are quite a lot more expensive than buying some of these. And I've often wondered, can you get very similar results by just actually not worrying too much about the speaker emulation that's part of the patch that you've created, and just you could have a pair of the 60-watt ones for under 600 quid.
Yep.
And there's your stereo 120 watt. Yes, it's not strictly speaking FR, but you kind of don't need it because it's got a real guitar cabinet in it. So just accept that everything's coming out of your a real guitar cabinet.
Absolutely. I mean, there's absolutely. I mean, I've been doing a travel log series for Line 6. I don't know if you've seen any of them, but there's a guy that I was interviewing who's in Melbourne. He plays with some big artists out there, and he's been using the Helix and HX Stomp, and he's been running into the original Catalyst and just using the power amp in sections of that as well. In terms of price and everything, for being able to do that, I've got quite a unique setup going on at home as well, where I've been using this as a wet amp for with a different sort of tube stack that I've been using at different times. So I've got an old Marshall head, which doesn't come out of the house very often at all. But actually, Sorry, it's overkill. It's real overkill. So I got 2x12 head, I got a 2x12 car, I got Marshall head, and I'm actually running it so that the Marshall stays completely, because there's no effect loop or anything on it. It's an old, it's the same age as me. And just using this, so it's just doing the wet sound, and it's doing the reverb and the delays from a pedal board as well. You know, so there's a lot of different uses for Catalyst. You know, it can be deep, or it can be really simple, traditional 2-channel amplifier with some basic effects.
I love it. Only a guitar player would take that complex a rig, £5,000 to probably put it together to go and do a wedding gig to earn 50 quid or whatever.
Oh, it's even worse for me because I was just using that setup at home. It's absolute overkill.
let me grab the laptop, show these guys what you can do inside, and then we're nearly there, chaps.
Let's do it.
Right, so I've got the editor open on the laptop here. You can see most of the controls on here are also on the amp. So very, very quickly, sort of left to right here, here's where I would choose my amp type. Boost, I can switch on and off from here. All of the controls along the top here are on the amplifier. In fact, Paul, if you just adjust one of them, you can see as Paul adjusts in real time, it updates the app as well. You can see where my 6 different banks are now, and then I've got my A and B sort of presets here. So that's kind of stuff that you can do on the amplifier anyway. So let's just look at the stuff that you can't do on the amp. So noise gate, was there something you could adjust about the noise gate? I noticed on the boost control.
Yep, you can switch it on and off.
Right, okay. But obviously within each patch you can now set the threshold and the decay over here. This is kind of cool. You've got this sag parameter. I do love this. I mean, old amps do hum, but normally as guitar players, we're looking for ways to get rid of that hum. Yes. But if you're Eric Johnson and it's part of the sound, obviously you can switch it on, which is kind of cool. But you've got this, you know, sag, which is the sort of the sponginess of the power amp section. Yep. Over here is important. Obviously, we've got our DI output cabinet emulation. So this is working on the DI and on the headphones and over USB if you want to use USB output.
Yes.
Pretty simple, 3 different cabs here. Lots of different microphones. It was interesting, like more than I was expecting. What have you got, like a dozen different microphones there, or 16 different microphones? You obviously mix and match the mic with the cab to get the desired sound. And then again, as Paul was mentioning before, you can see at the bottom here much more control over the effects parameters if you want it. And then over this side here, it's a little bit more indicative of the kind of the control that's on the amplifier. I'm not going to fiddle around too much on this. I think I'm probably just going to let Paul, I'm going to go through some of Paul's presets and we're just going to hear those through the DI out now. So everything you hear from this point onwards, we've muted the speaker in the amplifier and we're just hearing the DI in the room.
Yeah, and I mean, just to throw that in as well, there's a mute half power, half a watt, half power, and then full power switch on the back of the amp, on each of the amplifiers as well. So you can very quickly turn down for different gig situations.
There's obviously an expression pedal that can be used with this, and you've got ways of calibrating it, deciding where you want it in the signal chain. All of these names at the top here for the presets can be edited and just overwritten as well. So again, and what's nice about this as well, that's the only screen. There's not like multiple tabs of this to get into it a bit more. So I like it. It's easy to do. I will use this opportunity. I think we've cropped this so that you're only actually seeing the Catalyst editor, but Paul's home screen is a nice advert for his band's new album, 300 Foot Gorilla. It's been going for a long time now, that, hasn't it?
Oh, in various, I mean the bass player like 30 years or something. Yeah, it's like crazy amount of time. But this is, check it out. It's the best thing we've ever done. So there's an EP there.
Great.
So yeah, go check it out.
Cool. All right. Well, look, let's now just do some playing over some of your presets. Actually, I've just noticed that this amp advanced parameters changes depending on which amp you're using. So we've now got, in addition to the sag and the hum, which we had before, we seem to have a bias and a bias X control as well. So more stuff, I guess, from Helix coming over.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Cool. Anyway, so you play and I'll noodle. There you go, look. Just a very, very quick switch through some of Paul's presets here and a quick indication of how easy it is to use the editor. If you want to, that's probably it, isn't it, Mr. Paul?
I think we've covered everything, yes.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah. So there you go. You can see the relative sizes. I know that the very smallest one there's still a 1x12. The 100-watt one just, you know, the cabinet size is just a little bit taller and a little bit wider, and then the 212 is pretty traditional 212 size. Anyway, that was it. Thank you so much for coming down, Mr. Paul. It's lovely to see you. Try not to leave it 3 years next time. Or let's see what bits of our body have fallen off by the time we do see each other next time. Anyway.
Indeed. Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be down here. It's always fun. Thanks, man.
Well, look, links will be below to where you can find all of the Catalyst latest products. I think they're all in stock now, so you can buy one of these, have it tomorrow if you want. Anyway, thank you for joining us, and we will see you in another video soon. Au revoir.